Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving deep into, well, one of the most persistent and genuinely unsettling acoustic mysteries of the 20th century, the Cheshire Hum.
It really is a fascinating one.
Absolutely. If you were living in the UK, particularly in places like Cheshire, maybe Hale Barns or Stockport, all through the 1970s and into the early 80s, you might have been one of the, well, unlucky few driven almost mad by this relentless, low-frequency sound.
And the really strange part, most people couldn't hear it. Your neighbors, your family sometimes.
Exactly. It was this debilitating, localized environmental thing that just defied any simple explanation.
A real enigma.
So our mission today is to sift through the source material we've got, look at the characteristics of this haunting hum, and really focus on the most controversial, but maybe the most compelling theory.
Woodpecker theory.
The woodpecker, yeah. Linking this local distress in Cheshire to a massive, distant source. The Soviet Duga over-the-horizon radar system, the infamous Russian woodpecker.
Quite a leap, geographically speaking.
It is. And to even consider that, a sound in some suburban British street could be linked to a secret military site near Chernobyl, you have to remember the context, the Cold War.
Peak tension, paranoia everywhere.
Totally. The 1970s. Every unexplained blip, every bit of static wasn't just noise. People thought, okay, this could be military, this could be deliberate. The air was just thick with suspicion.
So the idea of a giant Soviet transmitter accidentally causing headaches in the UK.
It didn't sound totally absurd back then. It actually sounded plausible in a weird way. So, okay, let's unpack the hum itself first. What exactly were people reporting, hearing, or feeling?
Well, what's truly fascinating, and maybe why this mystery sticks around, is how incredibly subjective it was. People described a persistent low frequency, almost a throbbing sound.
Throbbing.
And it was constant. Reports start popping up mid-70s, and they keep going right into the early 1980s.
But elusive. Right, that's the paradox you mentioned.
Exactly. The elusive nature is key. You take someone like Mrs. Jones of Hale Barns. She reported this constant hum back in '78. For her, it was a real physical ordeal.
Right.
But her husband, maybe the person living next door, even an investigator, standing right there with her, they might hear absolutely nothing.
Wow.
And that lack of objective proof, that quickly fueled skepticism, which of course just made the residents feel even worse, more distressed.
Oh, I can only imagine the frustration. It must have been immense. If the officials, the instruments can't find anything, but you're suffering from nausea, headaches, you'd start to question your own sanity, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
So what could scientists propose based just on the symptoms? Was there a theory?
They pretty quickly pointed towards infrasound. That's the term for sound waves below the usual human hearing threshold, under 20 hertz.
Right, infrasound, stuff we can't consciously hear.
Precisely. But even if we can't hear it like normal sound, our bodies can definitely perceive it, or maybe feel it is a better word.
Feel it. Okay, and the sources, what do they say about the impact on people?
Oh, they're very clear. People were genuinely suffering. We're talking severe, chronic sleep problems, constant headaches, feeling nauseous, anxious, a real sense of disorientation.
So not just annoying, but actually debilitating.
Truly debilitating, yes. People were driven to extremes, installing, expensive soundproofing. Some even moved house entirely just to escape this phantom noise.
So the really crucial insight here is that for the Cheshire Hum, the human ear and body weren't just affected, they were maybe the most sensitive instrument available, even if it wasn't scientifically provable in the conventional sense.
That's a great way to put it. The symptoms lined up with known physiological responses to long-term exposure to infrasound or low-frequency noise. So there was a kind of physical legitimacy, even without a clear source.
And that paradox, a real physical reaction to something unconfirmed, that's the big investigative hurdle.
Exactly. Which brings us squarely to the most dramatic suspect on the list. That secret Soviet system thousands of miles away.
Right, this is where it shifts from, local noise complaint to proper Cold War drama. Enter the Duga transmitter, specifically Duga 3 near Chernobyl 2 in Ukraine.
Not just any old radio mast.
No, this thing was huge. A vital early warning system designed to spot incoming ballistic missiles basically over the pole.
An over-the-horizon radar system. That's the key bit of tech here.
Okay, ground that for us. What does OT, over the horizon, actually mean in practice? And how did Duga manage that kind of range?
So OTH is critical. Unlike your standard radar that needs a line of sight, OTH radar works by bouncing its signal off the ionosphere.
The upper atmosphere.
Exactly, that electrified layer way up high. It uses that reflection to see things thousands of miles away, way beyond the curve of the Earth, like geopolitical peekaboo, essentially.
Okay, bouncing signals off the sky.
But to do that, to get that bounce and cover that distance, you need phenomenal power. Our sources estimate Duga 3 was pumping out something like 10 megawatts.
10 megawatts.
10 megawatts. That sheer scale gives it global reach easily.
And presumably, that power is why everyone knew it was there. Because of the sound it made, the woodpecker nickname.
Absolutely. It got that nickname because of this very distinctive, sharp, repetitive tapping sound it made on shortwave radio bands all over the world. Ham radio operators hated it.
A tapping, like a woodpecker.
Precisely. And crucially, that tapping sound was caused by its pulse repetition rate. 10 hertz. 10 pulses every second.
10 hertz. Now, where does that fall on the sound spectrum?
That's right on the edge, dipping into the infrasound range. Very, very low frequency.
Okay, so let's connect the dots. We have this monster Soviet transmitter. It's pumping out maybe 10 megawatts of power. It has a characteristic 10 hertz pulse, very low frequency. It was so powerful its signal was heard interfering with radios globally.
Disrupting broadcasts everywhere, yeah.
And the timeline. Duga operated from 1976 until 1989.
Which perfectly overlaps with the peak reports of the Cheshire hum in the late 70s and early 80s.
So circumstantially, it looks pretty strong, doesn't it? Massive power, the right kind of low-frequency pulse, the timing fits perfectly.
The pieces seem to line up.
But, and this is the huge leap, how does a shortwave radio signal, electromagnetic waves bouncing off the sky over Ukraine, somehow turn into a physical sound people are feeling in Manchester? That feels like a big jump.
It is the critical point, absolutely. That jump from electromagnetic energy to localized acoustic sound is the theoretical bridge. And it's definitely complex. It involves several steps.
Okay.
The core hypothesis is that people weren't hearing or feeling the radio wave itself. They were experiencing secondary acoustic waves generated by the radar's interaction with the atmosphere.
Secondary waves? How?
Well, the idea is that the sheer power, that 10 megawatts, combined with the strong 10 hertz pulsing, could actually induce vibrations in the upper atmosphere. It's a process called atmospheric coupling.
So the radar is literally making the air molecules in the ionosphere vibrate?
Sort of, yes. The intense electromagnetic pulses heat and expand the air in the ionosphere rhythmically at that 10 hertz frequency. It's like the ionosphere itself starts humming at 10 hertz.
Okay, so the ionosphere isn't just reflecting the wave, it's physically vibrating in time with the woodpecker's tap, tap, tap.
That's the theory. And then those vibrations high up in the atmosphere propagate downwards through the lower layers as infrasound waves.
And infrasound can travel long distances.
Remarkably well, yes. Unlike audible sound, which fades pretty quickly, infrasound loses very little energy as it travels. So waves generated over Ukraine could, theoretically, reach the UK still carrying significant energy.
Okay, I can sort of tentatively accept the possibility that a Soviet radar could create this huge continental wave of infrasound, but that only solves half the problem, right?
How so?
Well, if Duga was bathing the whole of Northern Europe in this 10 hertz infrasound, why wasn't everyone from Norway to France reporting a hum? Why specifically Cheshire, Hale Barns, Stockport? That localization is the really tricky bit.
Yes, the geographical specificity. That's where the theory has to get even more nuanced. It tries to reconcile this global source with a very localized effect.
How does it do that?
The sources suggest that as this broad infrasound wave arrived over the UK, it would have encountered specific local conditions. Think of it less like a single beam hitting Cheshire and more like ocean waves hitting a complex coastline.
Okay.
The waves are hitting everywhere, but only certain features, maybe specific atmospheric conditions like a temperature inversion layer or particular geological formations on the ground, or even the layout of buildings in urban areas, only these specific shapes in Cheshire happen to resonate effectively with that incoming 10 hertz energy.
Like an acoustic lens, focusing the energy.
Possibly, yes. Or amplification through resonance. Some unique combination of factors in that region might have acted to focus or amplify the infrasound, making it perceptible, or at least physiologically effective, for sensitive individuals there, while it remained below the threshold elsewhere.
Wow. So the chain of events is incredibly specific. EM pulse from Duga, then atmospheric coupling in the ionosphere, then long-distance travel as infrasound, and then localized amplification by Cheshire's unique geography or atmosphere.
Exactly. It's a multi-step, quite complex causal chain.
And that complexity is precisely why getting definitive proof is so hard, isn't it? It's one thing to suspect, another to prove, especially when the source was a secret Cold War installation, and you're trying to trace this atmospheric chain reaction decades after the fact.
But precisely. The evidence remains compellingly circumstantial. The symptoms match infrasound effects, the timing fits, the physics allows for the mechanism in theory. But we don't have that smoking gun. We don't have a direct acoustic measurement taken in Cheshire at the time definitively linked back to a specific Duga transmission pulse.
Right, and in the absence of that smoking gun, investigators back then had to look closer to home, didn't they? So if Duga is the sort of grand, complex theory, what were the alternative, more mundane explanations they considered?
Well, naturally, local investigators started with the simplest things first. Parsimony, right? They looked hard at local industry, nearby factories, big ventilation systems, even heavy road traffic. All of those can produce low-frequency noise.
Makes sense. And why didn't those theories quite stick?
Primarily, they lacked the hum's defining characteristic, its relentless consistency. Local factories rarely run 247 for years on end with a perfectly steady, throbbing signature that sounds like 10 hertz.
True.
Plus, investigators often did check. They'd ask factories to shut down specific machinery, they'd monitor traffic patterns, but the hum usually persisted regardless. So while local noise pollution might have been part of the background, no single local source seemed to fit the bill for this constant, widespread, specific low-frequency pressure reported by so many.
So they did rule out the obvious local stuff mostly. It wasn't just ignored. What about natural causes? Anything from the Earth itself?
That was the other main category, geological sources, specifically something called microseisms.
Microseisms.
Yeah, these are tiny, continuous vibrations of the Earth's surface. They're usually caused by ocean waves interacting with the seafloor, especially during storms out at sea. They generate powerful, constant, low-frequency energy, very much in the right ballpark frequency-wise.
So that sounds plausible too, constant low frequency.
It does. But again, proving a direct link and explaining the specific localization in Cheshire was difficult.
Yet here we are, decades later, and the Duga theory still seems to have the strongest grip, certainly on the public imagination. Why do you think that is? Why the secret Soviet weapon over, say, ocean waves?
I think it's the power of the narrative, honestly. Local industry feels mundane. Natural microseisms are just sort of there, unavoidable. But the Duga theory, that offers drama.
Cold War intrigue.
Exactly. Military secrecy, advanced, almost sci-fi technology, causing this weird, intimate problem. When the official investigations come back with an unsatisfying answer like no clear source found, these grander, more complex, high-stakes theories tend to fill the vacuum. They offer a more compelling story.
It is darkly funny, though, isn't it? You imagine diplomats in Geneva arguing about missile counts, while the actual, lived experience of the Cold War for some people in Cheshire was potentially this collective Soviet-induced headache in their living room.
It really highlights the potential strangeness, the nuance of it all. And it's entirely possible, likely even, that the hum wasn't caused by just one single thing.
A combination.
Maybe. Perhaps you had a background level of global infrasound, maybe from Duga, maybe from natural sources too, and that interacted with more localized noise pollution, say, a factory that only ran during the day. Or, critically, it interacted with the particular sensitivities of certain individuals. Some people are just much more susceptible to low-frequency sound.
So multiple factors overlapping.
It could be a complex interplay.
Yeah.
And that lack of a simple answer actually validates how hard it was to investigate. You don't just need an acoustician. You probably need a psychologist to understand the differing sensitivities and an atmospheric physicist for the potential Duga link.
So let's try and summarize this deep dive. The Cheshire hum was definitely real for those affected. A deeply distressing, low-frequency throbbing sound, localized mainly in the 70s and 80s. And the prime suspect from afar, the Duga radar, was operating globally during exactly that time. It had the immense power, the 10 megawatts, and that specific 10 hertz pulse rate that could, theoretically, generate the necessary infrasound through atmospheric coupling.
The theory holds together, physically.
But the connection, while consistent with the physics and the reported symptoms, lacks that final definitive proof, largely because of the sheer complexity of the proposed mechanism and, of course, the secrecy around the Duga site itself. It remains this fascinating historical puzzle.
I think the truly enduring aspect of this mystery, looking back now, isn't just what the sound was. It's what the whole episode tells us about the limits of purely objective measurement when dealing with phenomena that have such a strong subjective or psychoacoustic element.
Yeah.
This investigation kind of proves that when the standard scientific toolkit doesn't give you a neat answer, the human experience itself, the distress, the insomnia, the physical symptoms, becomes its own valid category of evidence.
Yeah.
It demands respect, even if we can't perfectly map it with an oscilloscope or a microphone.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, thinking about this?
Well, this whole historical investigation into Duga and the Cheshire Hum really shows that to understand complex, unexplained stuff, you often need to look beyond just one field.
You need that multidisciplinary view.
Right. You need the acoustics, sure, but also the atmospheric physics, maybe human physiology, psychology, certainly, the historical context of the Cold War. Even sociology comes into it. The real value sometimes isn't just finding the single right answer, but understanding the sheer scope and complexity of the investigation itself.
Well said.
So maybe something to think about until our next deep dive.
When you encounter something truly inexplicable, remember the answer might not be right under your nose. It might be thousands of miles away, tangled up in geopolitics and history, and carried on an invisible wave that perhaps only your own body can truly detect.